Hey everyone, welcome to the Intentional Churches channel, wherever you're watching this. My name is Jesse Anderson. I'm a part of the IC team. And today I'm joined by IC co-founder Doug Parks. What's up, Doug?
Hey, Jesse, how are you doing?
Good. Did you guys survive all this crazy weather in Vegas, or did it not affect you at all?
You know what? Other than some pretty intense wind last weekend, we have missed all this drama that many of you guys have been going through. It's going to
Yeah.
be 72 degrees today in Vegas
Oh
and
my
sunny.
gosh, that's nice. Well, you guys had, it was kind of a little bit north of like the strip, but you guys had snow, what, like 4 weeks ago? That's weird.
That's right. Yeah, oh yeah,
Yeah,
man.
that's weird.
Happens every so often.
Yeah, we got a layer of ice last week and about 10 inches in Tulsa, but it's pretty much gone now. But I'll tell you what, my heart's gone out to those in Texas. What a tough
Yeah.
situation that is. Just continue to hear about that. Man, that's rough.
Oh yeah. I mean, everything we've seen down there. In fact, Bart and some of our team are down there even this week helping, I think, about 12 churches on board to
Yeah.
Church OS, and we got a message from one of our guys this morning, said even at the hotel the shower was lukewarm. Man, I can't imagine some of these pictures of homes where pipes have busted, and it's
It's
just
crazy.
crazy. I talked to a friend in Houston that said worse than Harvey in terms of the damage caused.
Wow,
Yeah.
that's crazy. Well, it's been wild. What a week of weather, and just 2020 continues even in 2021, right? A
Right.
lot of these crazy things
Unfortunately.
right now. I know it's kind of crazy. Well, today's conversation is going to be a fun one, but before we jump in, I'm sure we've got some viewers who may not be familiar with intentional churches. So, would you just briefly share our heart and why we exist?
Yeah, Jesse. So, yeah, if you're not familiar with us, or if this is just kind of a reminder, at the end of the day, intentional churches really exist for one reason only, and that is to help you as a church leader mobilize more and more of your 99 from Luke 15 to go reach their ones again and again and grow them up so that they can go reach more ones. And the way we do that, it really is pretty a simple way that we do that, and that is by aligning the thinking and methodology first of your staff and senior leadership, maybe even your board, and eventually all the way through your leadership and congregation to the ends of these very basic biblical fundamentals about equipping our 99 to go reach their ones. And then we do this through our system that we call Church OS, and it allows that alignment to happen around this, and really for you to multiply impact through the basics of biblical fundamentals, not some silver bullet mentality. So
Yeah.
it's always been our heart. I was a one. Dale Harlow, a youth pastor in my hometown, reached, and still to this day, I'm driven by a church not really having a guy like my dad in mind when they were designing their church activities. So we
Wow.
try to raise that banner personally, and very much so in your church too. So
Yeah, love it. Well, if you're watching this and you're interested in learning more, you could check out the Intentional Churches book, available wherever you get your books, or we've got a podcast on Apple, Google, and Spotify. We take it's myself and Doug and Bart, our other co-founder, just talking about the high level philosophy. In case you're not a book reader or you just want something easy to listen to on your commute or workout. So you can also watch the podcast on our YouTube channel, and we've got a ton of fresh content we're pushing out there on a regular basis. So you can subscribe there. But okay, so Doug, a couple of weeks ago, we were with the church in Colorado, and we were driving to work with them that day, and there was just some stuff that you were sharing about what you're seeing and sensing, just about church in 2021 and how to navigate. And it was like 10 to 12 minutes, and I was back in the back seat, like taking notes, and like we got to share this with people. Like I'm not hearing some of this stuff we talked about. And so this isn't a end all be all, thus saith the Lord, but from somebody who's been in ministry for a long time, I think you've got some great thoughts that I think should challenge church leaders. So would you just talk a little bit about what you're seeing and sensing and what we're learning on the ground level right now and in the age of 2021?
mhm. Yeah, Jesse. So I think first, you guys as church leaders know this, and that is we are the most informed church leadership in the history of the planet. Meaning, we have access to more data, more ideas, and thought leaders. And I don't know how much you were paying attention, but early on, Barna came out and said, I believe a third to a half of your people have left and aren't coming back. And then Rayner came out and said something similar, that a third of your people are gone. And for me, as a church leader, I'm like, yes, I get those things, and those are statistics that are researched. But Jesse, one of the things that's assumed in that reporting is we aren't going to do anything. And so my emphasis to church leaders is it's go time right now. Like
Mm.
the horizon is now set. Some sense of normalcy we can guess with a pretty good certainty right now of when it's going to hit in the calendar. I believe that's going to be more in the fall. And then, so my push would be, let's not just accept this thought leader, scary statistic stuff we've been hearing. Let's get on it, get back to the fundamentals, understand the power really is and always has been in the gospel. It's not in the latest idea. And that gospel rests in our people. And
Mm.
so the prep work, I believe every church in America should be doing right now in terms of preparing their 99, uh, building on the relational equity they built with neighbors, especially, but coworkers during COVID, and learning how to utilize the invite to more an invite into homes and into my life than into church right now. And I have a hunch if we do that really well over the next 4 or 5, 6 months, that when we get back to the fall and into January of 22, we're actually going to see a spiritual harvest that maybe we've never seen in my lifetime, at least.
Yeah.
So I think, Jesse, but just my big thing was be careful in this overinformed era of just, I see so many deflated church leaders out there that I do believe that this is a great time of hope for the local church and the gospel. We just got to get on it, and we got to start leading and innovating around what I've called guerrilla warfare tactics, not the big attractional, which I'm not against, but it really needs to be this hand-to-hand combat idea going forward. So
Yeah. So really, you're talking about taking more of an offensive approach and response
yes,
to statistics like that instead of a defensive, which kicks us back on our heels. And just what you said at that last at the last part there, I think is interesting too, because the church we were working with, I feel like there was maybe something where you were talking there about, and I don't know if you have anything to say about this, but it's almost like church plants and that kind of a mindset might help some of those more established, larger, organized churches who right now are kind of feeling like, how do we pivot? Any thoughts on that? Just the I guess the ability to pivot for a large organization is tougher. Any advice for looking towards the fall and kind of this opportunity for a reset there?
Mm. Well, I think number one, COVID gives us, as we all know this as church leaders now, it gives us cover to do all kinds of things that we may not have been
Right.
able to do before, and so taking advantage of that's super important right now. I think every church, and it's not just big churches, it's any church with history. You may be a church of 100, but you've got history, and we've really gotten into a more institutional mindset, organizational mindset. I was just with a church in San Diego in January. It's a church plant in year 3, I believe, and it's enlightening how quickly the mindset of church leadership shifts to the viewpoint of the institution or the organization of the church, and forgets that really we are in the people business first. It's not an institution to the people, it's our people to people. And so that's why my emphasis has been every church, no matter the size right now, really needs to go back to the basic fundamentals of church planting thinking as we're building between now and what I think is a September at the latest, January of 22 kind of relaunch mindset. And so if you don't know what that means, I'll give you a few things, but go interview church planters. I mean, we're doing a lot of work with Stadia church plants right now. And I'm just enthralled with how these guys have gathered and continue to move people forward. So if what that means by a church planter thing, a church planter thinks networking and gathering at a relational level where
Yeah.
you can build enough equity then to vision cast what could be. The church planter doesn't think service first. The church planter doesn't think the building first. The church planter is thinking the networks that I can gather. And then engagement, how many, like for instance, most church planters I know, one of the goals on their early target sheet is, how many coffees or lunches can I get this week? Or in this case, maybe Zooms with people. And then how do I get them engaged would be kind of a third level beyond that. And and again, a church planner thinks, can I give them a job first? So even in an established church, I think some of those things: gather relationally, networks, get as many relational whites of the eye conversations going as you can. Then how do I engage them and give them a job? I do think even the relaunch, the launching of a church plant idea where, there's preview gatherings and services maybe, or events. I think churches should be doing that in August as well, with some of this re-engaging. So yeah, I think the church should be on the offensive. I think right now we must realize there's more relational trust and equity that's been built in between our 99s and ones than probably ever in our lives. And then in order to capture that momentum, we have to think very differently than an organization or institution. We got to think hand-to-hand combat. How do I think like a church planner? So
that's really good. I think there's at least another video blog, maybe even more, maybe a couple of part series about that whole idea of the individual versus the institutional, and how that the institutional and kind of the way we think about approaching people and reaching people and all that has taken a hit from COVID. But that individual, that person to person, I love how you say the whites of the eyes conversation, has not as much. And be interesting to unpack our idea of the relational reach zone, and then what we're seeing, and how we can get back to some of that, where the institution, the structure, the systems, the organization, all that might be somewhat hampered going back in. So some great thoughts there. One of the things that you mentioned a couple of weeks ago was just, it meant, first of all, it's so difficult right now to evaluate metrics, isn't it? Like, like what's the new asterisk we put on everything? We were 1,000 pre-COVID, we have to clarify. But one thing that pastors are really looking at right now is, what is our percentage of in-person attendance? And I'm curious if you would share any thoughts on either side, whether that's on the low side as we start to look towards the fall, or what a high percentage right now might be an indication of. Any thoughts there that might help pastors? Because in some ways it just feels like I don't exactly know how to benchmark and evaluate where we're at, whether we're doing well, is high or better, or are we as bad as it seems, all of that. Any thoughts there?
Well, one caveat would be, before I answer the question, is that some of this depends on the region you're in, of course.
Sure.
Different parts of our country take on a different emphasis. But I was with a couple of church leaders who were celebrating getting to 80+% of pre-COVID attendance already. And that is a flag for me. If your attendance, in-person attendance, is really high, I think if you're a church leader, you really have to start looking under the hood, because who would show up in this moment during a pandemic is most likely going to be a 99er. And a 1 is not. I know my ones, when I look up and down my street, they're not showing up for in-person things and events. They're barely going to restaurants. And so that would be a warning sign. It's not a be all end all stat, but if you have a high in-person attendance already, I would start to question, are we really reaching ones? Or have we become kind of a hub of 99s? And then conversely, if your attendance is in-person attendance is super low, again, some of that could be context. If you're in the Northeast, of course, it's a little more rigid, or in Silicon Valley, where we've done quite a bit of work. We were there in December, where there's a real international influence or demographic in the population who's dealt with these kinds of things before, and is really not keen on getting together with people. So it's going to be different depending upon where you're at, but understanding that if you're super low and you're only 10% or something like that, I think overall 30 to 50% in-person attendance right now, you're going to be fine. It's not the metric I'd be counting really anyway. If I would be comparing it month to month, not year over year, which would be typical for me. And the things I'd be counting over this run, I would set a time and hold it loosely that we're going to, in essence, relaunch our church.
Hmm.
I do believe that should be in the September, end of August, September back to school frame, or January of 22. And then I would be counting these church planter type things. How many, even if you have a staff of one and a board, how many lunches and coffees are we getting with our people to re-engage them? And if I was I had a mega church and I had a staff of 100, I'd have the same metrics. How many coffees, how many lunches, what are the jobs that we're setting up that we're attaching people back to? My home church, this is part of our discussion last week in a planning session, we're really starting to stir back up the volunteer piece, because people need a church planner knows people need a job. That is one of the statistics that'll tell you that they're going to stick around and be engaged more if they have a job, in the mix. So yeah, the in-person attendance question, I would say just at this point, I kind of de-emphasized it. We're starting to put back on the board the use of double impact 3 to 5 years out. I would be setting a metric target for my relaunch. What percentage of pre-COVID attendance am I driving toward in September or January? We have teams 75%, 100%, and it's not just to get butts back in the seat. It's because then that informs the strategy about how we're going to engage our 99 over the next 5-6 months, in terms of trying to get them equipped to go reach their friends and neighbors. So
That's really, really good. Any thoughts, especially looking towards that September or January frame? Any just practical suggestions, whether it's consider starting, consider stopping, consider continuing these things, whether that's about mobilizing or engaging our 99 to reach their ones. Anything right now that you're seeing, sensing, or learning that would be helpful for church leaders beyond what you've shared? Anything else that would be helpful as we start to look at a potential relaunch?
well, I've kind of already hit it. I'll talk about one of our churches, been a longtime user of Church OS, Mission Ventura in California. And they sensed months ago the raising anxiety in the population in their city. And they developed and deployed a chaplain training and chaplaincy, again, creating jobs for the 99 that then they were promoting through their networks relationally as well as organizationally, where people had a place to go talk and process some of what we've all lost and been through. And what we know to be true about Mission Ventura, we'd ask of every church, they're holding that chaplaincy program loosely, knowing it's not a forever program, and that it's for at this moment in time. Again, they've done all the things. They've created jobs for their 99. They've met the need of ones and 99s in their community. And then their big thing of holding loosely is this program, it's not going to be around forever. No program we start is. And many churches are in this bucket. Just had a call with the church leader this morning. You can check it out on the YouTube channel. We have a COVID cleanup tool that could have a great conversation with you and your team. This is a moment in time of, if you haven't already, to really get under the hood and say, what are we going to stop doing coming out of COVID? Because I do believe the clock is ticking. You're not going to have much more of a runway of being able to say, hey, we're not going to do this, and then appropriately relationally leading the leaders of those programs and participants through the proper process of celebration and grieving if we're going to stop a program that was pre-COVID. So, yeah.
That's really good. One of the things that I love, that I always hear from both you and Bart, and I'm hearing it today, is you're not all hope is lost type people. Amidst everything we're dealing with, there's always hope. Anything you would say to that, just as we wrap our time, like as we look to a potential relaunch opportunity, and just as we're coming out of this pandemic and whatever life looks like on the other side, you guys are not doom and gloom people. You're very hope filled, and I sense that not only just in general, but around the church. And anything you would speak to that?
Oh yeah, man. Thank you. We're just not, you'll see it in any marketing we'll do. We're not a fear-based, like, we believe, again, it's just fundamentals, Jesse. The hope of the world is in Jesus.
Yeah.
It's not in our tactics. and the doom and gloom and the we're screwing up church and we've done it wrong. And I mean, I've been around it. It's like it can be loud in a pastor's or church leader's ear, and it can be deflating. And what I would say is, um, church leaders, it's times like these throughout history. If you go back into the history of the church, where the church has exploded because people are asking deep, meaningful questions about life. 500,000 people in our country have lost their lives to COVID, as best they can estimate as of today. I mean, the amount of grief and searching and trying to understand why. I mean, people are primed. I would argue ones of America are primed for spiritual conversations you could never have in the boom times when everybody's got money and there's no anxiety and all this. So I would say this, and I'd like to even pray for this if I could, Jesse, is that
Yeah.
church leaders do what you need to do to replenish and get healthy. Many of you we talk to are not in healthy spots. You've started some bad habits in this whole thing, and you got to get that cleaned up. Get with somebody who can help you do that. And then it's go time, man. As much as you can, and transitioning through your own grief, I do believe the Lord will be faithful to the work that you've done and have been doing. And now I do believe there's a harvest in front of us in late 21 and 22 that should be pretty amazing. And it's awesome. God's calling us back to the fundamentals. It wasn't our buildings and our ideas and our programs. It was always us as people. And so for me, that gives me great hope, because I don't have to have the most money or the biggest staff or anything else. I can just start one by one. So you okay if I just pray for some church leaders?
Would love it. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. God, thanks so much for some time just to talk about your bride and your church here. And I do. My heart is just goes out to the church leaders across our country and across the world. And the reason they got into ministry, every church leader I've ever met, is that many more would come to know you, and those who do would grow in you and go reach more. And I pray for church leaders this time. I pray for any that may be watching or listening who have fallen into some bad patterns in their life. I pray you convict them. If they need convicted, I pray you give them the right relationship if they've already been convicted and just need some help and support. God, I pray for the healthy church leaders that may be listening to this, and I pray that this fires them up, that they realize that this is an opportunity. This is a moment in time in history they may never experience again in life, where the table is set for some great stories of you moving in America and beyond through all this grief, anxiety, and loss we've had. And God, I pray that you would remind all of us who lead in the church that the hope is never in men. The hope is in you and the power of your gospel living in us, and that we are only vessels that people who carry that, and that is a great responsibility, but also a tremendous honor. God, I pray all this in Jesus' name.
Amen. Well, Doug, thanks so much for sharing today, not only from your head, but from your heart. And church leaders, as you're watching this, I hope this has been encouraging and helpful to you. I hope to spur some conversations with your leadership team. If it has been helpful, you know the drill: like, share, subscribe. We've always got new content that's coming up on our new YouTube channel. You can subscribe there. And if you want to stay connected just to regular updates, go to intentionalchurches.com/blog. There's a place there where you can sign up to our emails. And of course, you can find us on the socials. And like I mentioned, check out the podcast. And we hope to stay connected to you. Hope that it's of help to you, and hope in the future that maybe we can partner with you and be of service in any way. So thanks for watching. Be blessed.